Commander John Miller stood at the viewport of Earth's orbital station, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the approaching alien vessel. Its sleek design reflected the light of Earth's sun, shimmering like a jewel against the blackness of space. After years of preparation and months of careful communication, the day had finally arrived. The Galactic Council was coming to meet humanity face to face. "Commander, the delegation will dock in 5 minutes," said Lieutenant Susan Wright, her voice steady despite the historical significance of the moment. Miller nodded. "Are our representatives ready?" "Yes, sir. The President and the Secretary General are waiting in the welcome chamber." Miller took a deep breath. Humanity had discovered they weren't alone in the universe just 3 years ago, when the Council had made first radio contact. Today marked their official welcome into the galactic community, or so they hoped. The alien ship connected to the station with a soft thud. Miller felt a slight vibration through the floor beneath his feet. The airlock cycled, and he straightened his uniform before walking to join Earth's welcoming committee. The airlock doors slid open to reveal 12 beings, each different from the next. Miller had studied the briefing materials extensively, but seeing the aliens in person was entirely different. Some had scales, others fur. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Their sizes ranged from barely reaching Miller's knee to towering nearly 10 feet tall. A blue-skinned humanoid with silver eyes stepped forward. "I am High Counselor Trell of the Galactic Council. We greet Earth and its people with open arms and peaceful intentions." The translator device at Trell's throat made the words sound slightly mechanical but clear. The Earth President stepped forward to reply, but Miller's attention was drawn to one of the aliens at the back of the group. Tall and thin with pale yellow skin and 4 arms, this being was staring at the humans with unmistakable contempt. Unlike the others who displayed curiosity or diplomatic neutrality, this alien's body language screamed disdain. After formal introductions, the delegation moved to the conference room. Miller found himself seated near the yellow-skinned alien, who he now knew was Ambassador Zextor of the Vaxians. "Your species has advanced quickly," said a furry delegate to Miller's right. "From your first radio signals to space travel in less than 2 centuries. Most impressive." "Thank you," Miller replied. "We're eager to learn from the Council." Zextor made a sound like a snort. "Eager to take, you mean? Primitive species always are." The room grew quiet. High Counselor Trell gave Zextor a warning look before turning to the humans. "Please excuse Ambassador Zextor. The Vaxians are cautious with new species." "Cautious is diplomatic," Zextor said. "I prefer realistic. Humans have barely mastered their own solar system, yet you invite them to join us as equals." The President handled the moment gracefully. "We understand your concerns, Ambassador. Earth doesn't expect to be treated as technologically equal. We know we have much to learn." "It is not your technology that concerns me," Zextor replied. "It is your nature." A reptilian council member leaned forward. "We've observed Earth for generations. Humans have shown remarkable resilience and adaptability. Their capacity for growth is exceptional. Their capacity for violence is what I notice," Zextor countered. Miller felt a chill run down his spine. The diplomatic smiles around the table couldn't hide the tension. The meeting continued for hours, with most council members showing genuine interest in Earth. They explained the benefits of joining the galactic community: technology sharing, trade routes, cultural exchange. But throughout it all, Miller couldn't shake the feeling that the Vaxians represented trouble. As the delegation prepared to leave, High Counselor Trell took Miller aside. "The Council welcomes humanity, Commander. Most of us have great hopes for your species." "And the Vaxians?" Miller asked quietly. Trell's silver eyes darkened slightly. "They fear what they don't understand. And there is much about humans they don't understand." Miller watched as the delegates returned to their ship. Most gave friendly gestures of farewell. Zextor, however, simply stared at Miller with those cold eyes before turning away. Earth had taken its first step into a larger universe. Miller hoped it wouldn't also be stepping into its first interstellar conflict. 6 months had passed since first contact, and Lisa Carson was still getting used to her new office in the Galactic Council's massive space station. As Earth's ambassador, she had spent the last half-year building relationships with alien diplomats and learning the complex web of interstellar politics. Lisa looked out her window at the stars. Earth was just a small blue dot from here, almost lost among countless others. She turned when her door chimed. "Enter," she called out. The door slid open to reveal Security Chief Krell. The reptilian alien was nearly 7 feet tall with scales that shifted between green and blue depending on the light. Despite his intimidating appearance, Krell had become one of Lisa's few trusted allies on the station. "Ambassador Carson," Krell said with a slight bow of his head. "May we speak privately?" Lisa nodded and pressed a button on her desk that activated the privacy field the council engineers had installed. The field would block any listening devices. "What's wrong, Krell? You look worried." Krell's scales darkened slightly, a sign of concern in his species. "I have discovered something troubling. The Vaxians have been gathering military intelligence about Earth." Lisa frowned. "What kind of intelligence?" "Detailed scans of your orbital defenses, information about your military bases, weapons capabilities." Krell placed a data tablet on her desk. "They've also been sending unmarked probes into your solar system." Lisa scrolled through the information on the tablet. Her stomach tightened as she saw images of Vaxian ships taking detailed scans of Earth's moon bases and defense satellites. "Why? We've done nothing to threaten them." Krell made a sound like a sigh. "The Vaxians believe that humans are dangerous. They see your rapid technological growth as a threat." "That's ridiculous," Lisa said. "We're centuries behind most council species. It is not your current technology that concerns them," Krell explained. "It is how quickly you adapt and learn. In just 6 months, your scientists have already begun incorporating council concepts into new inventions. The Vaxians find this unsettling." Lisa stood up and paced the room. "We need to bring this to the full council immediately." 3 hours later, Lisa stood before the council chamber. Representatives from all 27 member species sat in a semicircle facing her. The Vaxian ambassador, Zextor, looked particularly displeased. "These accusations are baseless," Zextor said after Lisa presented the evidence. "We are simply conducting standard observations of a new species, as is our right." High Counselor Trell's silver eyes narrowed. "Military scans are beyond standard observation, Ambassador." "We have security concerns," Zextor replied smoothly. "Humans have a violent history. They fought 2 world wars in a single century. They developed nuclear weapons and used them on their own kind." Lisa stepped forward. "Yes, we have made mistakes, but we have learned from them. Earth has been at peace for decades." "A temporary state," Zextor dismissed with a wave of one of his 4 arms. "Your nature will assert itself eventually." The council chamber erupted in multiple conversations. Lisa noticed that while many council members seemed concerned by the Vaxian actions, few were willing to openly challenge them. An elderly Dorn representative, a being that resembled a cross between an owl and a bear, raised his voice above the others. "I move that we issue a formal warning to the Vaxian government to cease military intelligence gathering against Earth." Votes were cast. The motion passed, but barely. Lisa could see that most council species wanted to avoid conflict rather than take sides. After the session, High Counselor Trell approached Lisa in the corridor. "Ambassador Carson, you should know that the Vaxians rarely act without purpose. Be vigilant." "Are they really that threatened by us?" Lisa asked. "We're barely spacefaring." Trell looked at her with ancient eyes. "Most council species respect humanity's potential. We have watched your kind overcome endless challenges. The Vaxians, however, fear what they cannot control." Lisa walked back to her office, the weight of her responsibility heavy on her shoulders. She needed to warn Earth. The friendly welcome into the galactic community had just revealed its first serious crack. Peter Jackson drummed his fingers on the conference table as he waited for the council meeting to begin. As one of Earth's diplomats stationed on the Galactic Council Station, he had attended dozens of these meetings over the past year. Today was supposed to be routine. Updates on trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. The massive doors to the council chamber swung open. High Councilor Trell entered, his blue skin pale with stress. The other council members filed in behind him, their faces showing various signs of concern. "What's happening?" Peter whispered to Mira, a feline-like diplomat from the Relian system who had become a friend. Mira's ears flattened against her head. Vaxian warships have entered Earth's solar system. Peter felt his heart drop. What? When? Just hours ago. 20 warships in attack formation. Before Peter could respond, High Councilor Trell called the emergency session to order. The central display activated, showing a fleet of sleek, angular ships positioned near Mars. "The Vaxian government has sent a message to Earth," Trell announced. "They are demanding that Earth surrender all military assets and accept Vaxian protection." The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Peter stood up. "This is an act of war. Earth has done nothing to provoke this." Ambassador Zextor rose from his seat, his yellow skin flushed with darker patches of orange. "We are not declaring war. We are offering protection to a species that cannot protect itself." "Protection from what?" Peter demanded. "From your own violent nature," Zextor replied. "Our research into human history shows a pattern of self-destruction. We are merely intervening before you become a threat to the galaxy." A representative from the Dorn spoke up. "This violates council law. No member species may take military action against another without council approval." Zextor made a dismissive gesture with one of his 4 arms. "Earth is not yet a full member. They are still under probationary status." Peter watched as the council divided before his eyes. Some species condemned the Vaxian actions outright. Others seemed hesitant to get involved. A few even suggested that the Vaxians might have a point. "The Vaxians have given Earth 48 Earth hours to comply," Trell announced. "They have stated that if Earth refuses, they will begin attacking orbital installations." Peter's communication device buzzed. It was a message from Earth's Defense Command. Earth had refused the ultimatum and was preparing for possible attack. An elderly council member named Garv, who rarely spoke at meetings, suddenly stood. His crystalline body glimmered under the chamber lights. "This is not the first time the Vaxians have done this." All eyes turned to him. Zextor visibly stiffened. "The Vaxians have a history of offering protection to developing worlds," Garv continued. 3 systems in the Outer Rim accepted Vaxian protection in the last century. All 3 are now effectively Vaxian colonies, stripped of resources and autonomy. Zextor's voice turned cold. "Those were necessary interventions to maintain galactic stability." Peter looked around the room, suddenly understanding. "You've been doing this all along, haven't you? Using the Council's non-interference policies to expand your territory." "We do what must be done," Zextor replied. "Species like yours need guidance. Your technology is primitive, but growing too quickly. You don't understand the responsibility that comes with advanced weaponry." The Council debated for hours. In the end, they passed a resolution condemning the Vaxian action and calling for immediate withdrawal from Earth's solar system. But the resolution had no teeth, no military backing, no sanctions. As the meeting ended, Peter received another message. The Vaxians had begun their attack on Earth's orbital stations. The first shots of war had been fired. High Councilor Trell approached Peter as the chamber emptied. "We cannot officially intervene," he said quietly, "but not all council members agree with the official position. Help will come, though not openly." Peter nodded grimly. Earth stood alone against a technologically superior enemy. But as he hurried to contact Earth's Defense Command, he realized something important. The Vaxians had made a critical error. They had assumed Earth would surrender without a fight. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Captain Laura Bennett gripped the arms of her command chair as the U.S. Defiant shook from another hit. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge. Through the main view screen, she watched a Vaxian warship glide through space, its weapons charging for another attack. "Shields at 30%, Captain," called out her first officer, Rick Davis. Laura wiped sweat from her forehead. The battle had raged for 3 hours, and Earth's ships were taking heavy losses. The Vaxian vessels were faster, their weapons more powerful, their shields stronger. "Target their forward weapons array," Laura ordered. "Fire when ready." The Defiant's missiles launched, striking the Vaxian ship. The alien vessel barely seemed to notice. "Minimal damage to their shields," Rick reported. Laura watched as 2 more Earth vessels exploded in the distance. The Vaxians were picking them off one by one, following standard attack patterns taught in basic space combat training. That's when she noticed something odd. "They're using the same approach every time," she said quietly, then turned to her tactical officer. "Sam, pull up the records of their last 5 attacks. Show me their movement patterns." The officer quickly displayed the data on a side screen. Laura studied it for a moment, then smiled for the first time since the battle began. "They're following textbook maneuvers. No variation, no adaptation." "Captain." Rick looked confused. "They don't improvise," Laura explained. "Their tactics are perfect, but rigid." She turned to her communications officer. "Contact all remaining Earth vessels. New battle plan. Code Wildcat." As the Defiant took another hit, Laura outlined her idea. Instead of fighting according to space combat doctrine, Earth's ships would use unpredictable, seemingly illogical tactics, moves that any trained commander would consider wasteful or inefficient. 20 minutes later, Laura watched as her plan unfolded. Earth ships began making erratic maneuvers, cutting engines at seemingly random moments, firing at unusual angles, and executing high-risk, close-range attacks. The Vaxian fleet's response was slow and confused. Their perfect formation began to break as they struggled to predict what the Earth ships would do next. They can't adapt quickly, Laura realized. They rely on patterns and protocol. The Defiant swept in close to a Vaxian destroyer, firing at point-blank range before spinning away. The alien ship turned slowly, unable to track the faster, more agile Earth vessel. For the first time, Laura saw a Vaxian ship's shields fail. Earth's fighters swarmed it immediately, causing significant damage before the alien vessel managed to retreat. Meanwhile, on Earth, engineer Alan Wright stared at his computer screen in his underground lab. Since the attacks began, he had been analyzing data from the Vaxian ships. Something about their technology seemed familiar. "That's it," he muttered, eyes widening. He grabbed his phone and called Defense Command. "The Vaxian systems have a weakness," he explained to the general on the other end. "Their technology relies on perfectly balanced electromagnetic fields. If we broadcast at exactly 372.5 MHz, we can disrupt their systems." Within an hour, Earth's defense forces had modified their weapons. In space, Laura received the new information and adjusted the Defiant's systems accordingly. "Target the lead Vaxian ship and fire the modified torpedoes," she ordered. The torpedoes streaked across space, striking the Vaxian vessel. Instead of exploding against shields, they released an electromagnetic pulse at the precise frequency Alan had identified. The effect was immediate. The Vaxian ship's lights flickered. Its weapons powered down. Its engines stalled. "It's working," Rick said in amazement. Laura opened a channel to all Earth ships. "This is Captain Bennett. Target all Vaxian vessels with the modified weapons. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate humanity." On the Galactic Council station, several members watched the battle through long-range sensors. A reptilian counselor turned to his colleague. "The humans are adapting," he said with a note of approval. "The Vaxians expected an easy victory against a primitive species." His colleague nodded. "They will learn what we already knew. Humans may lack advanced technology, but they possess something far more dangerous: creativity in crisis. Colonel Steve Martinez pressed his back against a pine tree and peered through his binoculars. In the valley below, Vaxian troops were setting up what looked like a base camp. Their tall, thin bodies moved with precision as they unpacked equipment from their landed shuttles. "How many?" whispered Sergeant Frank Wilson, crouching beside him. "About 50, Steve replied. "They're struggling with their movements." The Vaxians had launched ground attacks on Earth after their space fleet met unexpected resistance. This group had landed in the Rocky Mountains, likely planning to establish a forward base. "Their armor is way beyond ours," Frank noted. "And those weapons, nothing we have can match that." Steve lowered his binoculars and smiled. "But they can barely walk in our gravity. See how they're moving. Earth's pull is about 20% stronger than their home world." He pointed to a Vaxian soldier who stumbled and fell while carrying equipment. The alien struggled to get back up, its limbs trembling under the extra weight of Earth's gravity. "And they don't like our air much either," Steve added. "Too much oxygen for them. Makes them sluggish." Steve had spent the 2 weeks since the invasion began studying everything Earth knew about Vaxian biology. The aliens had superior technology, but physical weaknesses that could be exploited. "We don't engage them directly," Steve told his team of 20 soldiers gathered around him. "We use the terrain. We use hit-and-run tactics. We make them chase us up and down these mountains until their bodies give out." The soldiers nodded. They were a mix of different military branches, brought together by the desperate situation. All had been briefed on the Vaxians' physical limitations. That night, Steve's team struck the alien camp from 3 directions. They fired from the cover of trees, then quickly moved to new positions. The Vaxians responded with overwhelming firepower, but they shot at places where the humans had already left. "They rely too much on their targeting systems," Steve noticed. "They don't trust their own eyes." When the Vaxians tried to pursue, they struggled up the steep mountain slopes. Some fell to their knees, gasping in the thin, oxygen-rich air. Steve's team led them on an exhausting chase through ravines and over ridges. By morning, the humans hadn't lost a single soldier, while 5 Vaxians lay dead from overexertion in Earth's punishing environment. In space, the battle continued. Captain Laura Bennett's discovery of Vaxian tactical rigidity had spread to all Earth forces. Human ships now moved in unpredictable patterns that confused the alien fleet. Earth scientists had quickly produced more electromagnetic disruptors based on Alan Wright's discovery. These weapons didn't destroy Vaxian ships outright, but disabled their systems long enough for Earth vessels to cause real damage. On the Galactic Council station, reports of Earth's resistance caused a stir. Many Council species had expected humans to surrender quickly to a technologically superior enemy. Instead, humanity was not only fighting back, but beginning to win small victories. "We should send aid openly," argued a furry Matari representative in the council chamber. "The Vaxians have violated our laws. Intervention would set a dangerous precedent," countered another counselor. "We must maintain our neutrality." High Counselor Trell observed the debate with mixed feelings. Officially, the council remained neutral. Unofficially, several council species had begun sending technology and intelligence to Earth through secret channels. On Earth, Steve's team was joined by 3 more Special Forces groups. Together, they surrounded the remaining Vaxian ground forces in the mountains. "They're calling for reinforcements," reported Lieutenant Amy Baker, who monitored Vaxian communications. Steve nodded grimly. "Let them come. Every shuttle they send down is one less ship in orbit." He looked at the tired but determined faces of his soldiers. They were adapting, learning to fight an enemy with superior technology by using Earth itself as a weapon. The Vaxians thought this would be an easy conquest. Steve told his troops, "They're learning that humans don't surrender. We adapt, we overcome, and we never ever give up our home without a fight." His soldiers nodded in agreement. The battle for Earth was just beginning, but humanity was proving to be a far more formidable opponent than the Vaxians had ever expected. Dr. Karen Wilson stared at the brain scans on her screen. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, she had been studying Vaxian biology since the war began. Now, working with Council scientists on a neutral research station, she was starting to understand why the Vaxians acted as they did. "Their neural pathways are fascinating," said Dr. Zrel, a gelatinous being from a water world near the galactic core. "Notice how linear they are compared to human brains." Karen nodded. The scans came from a captured Vaxian soldier who had collapsed during a ground battle in Earth's high gravity. The prisoner was being treated humanely, despite the ongoing conflict. "They process information very efficiently," Karen noted, "but there's almost no interconnection between different regions of the brain." "Exactly." Zrel's body rippled with excitement. Vaxians evolved on a world with few predators or competitors. Their brains developed for problem-solving, not adaptation. Karen thought about this as she studied the scans more closely. "So they're highly intelligent, but in a specialized way." "Yes, they excel at logical problems with clear parameters, but situations requiring creativity or handling the unexpected." Zrel made a dismissive gesture with a pseudopod. "This explains so much about the war. The Vaxians' initial attacks had been devastating, but as soon as humans began using unpredictable tactics, the aliens struggled to respond effectively." "What about their psychology?" Karen asked. "How do they handle failure?" Zrel's color darkened slightly. "They don't. Failure doesn't exist in their evolutionary history. When confronted with defeat, they simply escalate." Meanwhile, in an emergency council session, the conflict had reached a critical point. Ambassador Lisa Carson, washed as the Vaxian representative, Zextor, addressed the council. "The humans continue to resist our peacekeeping efforts." Zextor's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Their stubbornness leaves us no choice but to increase our response." "Peacekeeping." Lisa stood up, unable to contain her outrage. "You've attacked our planet without provocation." "We are preventing a future threat," Zextor replied coldly. "And now we must use stronger measures." The council chamber fell silent as Zextor displayed images of a massive weapon being assembled in orbit around Mars. "This is a planet killer," he announced. "If Earth does not surrender within 3 of their days, we will use it on their moon as a demonstration. After that, Earth itself will follow." The council erupted in protest. Even species that had remained neutral now voiced their objections. Planet killers were forbidden by the oldest laws of the galactic community. "This is too far," roared the reptilian councillor Krell. "The council must intervene." "Indeed," agreed a crystalline being who rarely spoke. "I move that we censure the Vaxian government and demand immediate withdrawal from the Sol system." The vote was nearly unanimous. Only the Vaxians and their few remaining allies opposed the motion. But when Lisa asked what would happen if the Vaxians ignored the censure, the High Counselor Trell could only offer weak assurances about diplomatic pressure and possible sanctions. After the session, several counselors approached Lisa privately. "We cannot officially provide military aid," said Krell, "but my government has sent ships. They will arrive discreetly to help defend your world." "As has mine," added the crystalline counselor. "The Vaxians have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed." By day's end, Lisa had received similar promises from 15 council species. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? In her lab, Dr. Karen Wilson reached a breakthrough in understanding Vaxian psychology. She called Earth's Defense Command immediately. "The Vaxians can't process defeat," she explained urgently. "They literally cannot comprehend losing. That's why they're escalating to planet killers. But this is also their weakness." "How so?" asked the general on the other end. "Their inability to handle failure makes them predictable. When pressed, they always respond with more force, never with new tactics. If we can use this psychology against them." Karen paused, thinking of the billions of lives at stake. We might just have a chance of winning this war. Daniel Green moved quietly through the vast archives of the Galactic Council. As Earth's historian, he had been granted limited access to study alien cultures. But today, with help from sympathetic council members, he was entering restricted sections that held the oldest records in the galaxy. "You must hurry," whispered Vila, a small avian being who worked as an archive assistant. "These records are sealed for a reason." Daniel nodded and followed her through dimly lit passages lined with data crystals and ancient texts. They reached a sealed door marked with symbols he couldn't read. "Why are you helping me?" Daniel asked as Vela unlocked the door. "Because the Vaxians are wrong about your species," she replied. "And the truth is in here." The room beyond was small and circular. At its center stood a pedestal holding a single crystal that glowed with a soft blue light. "This contains the complete history," Vila explained. "Records dating back to the founding of the first galactic civilization, over 100,000 Earth years ago." Daniel approached the crystal carefully. "How do I access it?" "Place your hand on it and think of Earth." Daniel did as instructed. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, his mind filled with images and knowledge. He gasped as information flooded his consciousness. He saw ancient star maps and images of a powerful species that looked remarkably human. These beings had ruled a vast empire spanning thousands of star systems. They had been warriors, explorers, and builders of wonders. And then he saw the Great War, a conflict that nearly destroyed the galaxy 50,000 years ago. The human-like empire had fought against a coalition of other species in a devastating conflict that left countless worlds in ruins. In the aftermath, the human-like beings had vanished. Some records suggested they had been defeated and scattered. Others hinted they had withdrawn voluntarily to prevent further destruction. The most intriguing theory was that they had hidden themselves on a single world, erasing their own memories of their galactic past. A world called Earth. "We are their descendants," Daniel whispered in awe. "The warriors who nearly destroyed the galaxy." Vela nodded solemnly. "This is why most council species approached humans with caution and respect. The oldest members remember the legends. They know what humans might become again." And the Vaxians. They believe the ancient stories are myths. They think humans are just another primitive species to be conquered. Vela's wings fluttered anxiously. They don't understand what they've awakened. Meanwhile, in space, the battle for Earth's moon was reaching its climax. The Vaxian planet killer weapon was almost operational. Earth forces fought desperately to destroy it before it could fire. Captain Laura Bennett led a fleet of 30 ships, a mix of human vessels, and secretly provided alien craft toward the massive weapon. The Vaxian fleet moved to intercept them. "They're using their standard defensive formation," Laura noted to her officers, "exactly as Dr. Wilson predicted." Using the psychological profile developed by Dr. Wilson, Earth's forces had created a battle plan specifically designed to exploit Vaxian mental weaknesses. They launched a series of feints and false retreats, drawing the Vaxian ships out of position. Confused by tactics their rigid minds couldn't comprehend, the Vaxian fleet scattered. This opened a path to the planet killer. "All ships, target the main power core," Laura ordered. "Fire everything." The combined firepower of Earth and allied vessels struck the massive weapon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then explosions bloomed across its surface, chain reacting through its systems. The planet killer began to break apart. On the council station, Daniel rushed into the emergency session, the ancient knowledge still fresh in his mind. "I know why the council has been watching Earth," he announced to the startled delegates. "I know who we really are." High Counselor Trull fixed him with silver eyes. "Then you understand why this conflict must end quickly, before humanity fully remembers its past." Daniel nodded gravely. The Vaxians didn't just attack a developing world. They attacked the sleeping descendants of the most powerful warriors the galaxy has ever known. Throughout the council chamber, the older species shifted uncomfortably. They had always known the truth that the Vaxians had dismissed as myth. Humans were not just another species. They were the heirs to a legacy that had once made the stars themselves tremble.